Welcome, it's Jeremy Allen Gould. I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that in fact the rumors that you have all heard are true. I started this podcast because I freaking love music, movies, and all things creative. In my life, I've been blessed to be around incredibly gifted artists, musicians, filmmakers, and actors, and everyone in between. This is a place to hear their stories. If you'd like, add me on Instagram and Facebook at The Rumors Are True Cast. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Hello, and welcome back to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Unoriginal Vinyl's Jason Zeimet. Jason and I talk about music, obviously, vinyl, obviously, concerts, obviously. It's an awesome conversation. We didn't really know each other till this point, so it was awesome to get to know him, and since then we've been talking quite a bit. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode. He's done so much amazing things for music, vinyl, bands, just an awesome dude. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Jason Zeimet. Jason Zeimet, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, dude.
I'm glad to be here, Jeremy. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inquiring.
Absolutely. So tell me what you're up to lately. How's things going with Unoriginal Vinyl and your life?
You know, oddly, Unoriginal Vinyl started as the idea that we could manifest some of these albums that we loved so dearly onto vinyl format for the first time in around 2017. Formally, that's what we started calling it. But I had been working on vinyl projects long before that. In fact, was doing test pressing, inspection for Tooth and Nail, as early as I think 2007 or 8, something like that, letting them know. I've never worked for Tooth and Nail, but I was always friend to and around the offices there.
Yeah.
Up in Seattle, I was working for Jones Soda Company and just hanging out with the guys at Tooth and Nail all the time, listening to the new albums. And in that season of the label's history, vinyl wasn't a very big thing. It was all Best Buy CD sales and all of that. So I was always a little bit left of center to their narrative, which was we have to find a way to sell as many units as possible. And with vinyl being a limited capacity format in its very nature and handmade, you know, it wasn't a big priority. But I was always kind of lurking around looking for an opportunity or window to start a vinyl club for some of my, I don't know, let's call it favorite records. Even at that time, present records that I felt were being neglected on the label, that were being overlooked, stuff that might have been a little bit more unknown on the label that I would have loved to see get released on vinyl that I thought was perfect for vinyl format. But the label was just doing so much business at Hot Topic or Best Buy.
That makes sense.
CDs. But I've been around for a long time. My first concert was 90 Pound Wuss, Value Pack, and MXPX in 1996. Oh, wow. And just grew up a youth group kid. Plus, more than that, I was never the youth group kid that wanted to burn his secular CDs. I'd just been immersed in music and had a, let's call it a savant style brain for retention of all artists. So once I started getting into music, it was like I needed to know everything about every band.
I get it. You know?
And so when I decided and learned sort of a couple loopholes in the changing music industry in 2017, I came up with a plan to essentially rebrand some of these vinyl reissues for Tooth and Nail and for some other artists that would sort of put a quality seal on them that would be recognizable for fans as this passes the litmus test for all the things we wanted this reissue to be. It was cool color variants, maybe a retrospective from the artist speaking about it. But I was never nostalgic about just a certain type of music or a certain scene. I wanted to tell multiple stories as they appeared relevant in 2023 and 2020 or 2017 when we started. I just like the idea of telling people stories and what they had learned throughout their life now. I think that's what you're probably trying to do here with this podcast. Is that right?
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that. I grew up myself just, in the Christian punk rock world, if you will, and, my buddies and I, we discovered Tooth and Nail as, Starflyer 59, Focused, Wish for Eden, all that stuff. And that was just like a game changer, from Petra. Petra was still, actually, I still love Petra, but, it was a whole different world. And, it was just a gateway and it's just something that I love to live and think about. And because, everyone loves to think about the good times, and so it's just cool to, So I started this because I was like, I've been wanting to do this for so long. I used to book bands in 2004 to 2008 or 2009, maybe a little longer than that. And I booked all these bands and they were so cool. And some of the bands I didn't like and some of the bands I liked, and, I made money and it was fun. And I built, helped build a little scene where I lived, and it wasn't about that. I just wanted kids to see what I liked when I went to shows, like when I, lost my mind when I saw, Starflyer 59 play in some small little, church with like 20 kids. And I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, so that's kind of what brought me on that path. And then, now that I'm not doing that anymore and not losing money, I thought, hell, I'll do a podcast. I know a ton of people, and everyone was like, you should do it. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I just kept putting it off, and then finally did it. So
have you always been a Florida Panhandle adjacent sort of guy, Northern Florida guy?
Yes and no. I was born in Tampa. My dad was a pastor, so we moved around a lot. And so I lived in Missouri. I lived in Maryland. Actually, Maryland is kind of where I discovered kind of like what I was talking about, the hardcore and Tooth and Nail and stuff like that. And then when I moved to Jacksonville after that, and then they have a venue here called Murray Hill Theater. And that's like had everyone, anyone you can think of came through. And so that's where I got to see a lot of those shows and meet a lot of, people in the industry. And then I started to take note and go, I could do this. Like, I can totally do this. And I moved to the Midwest and I got married, have 3 beautiful kids who are adults now. And I was like, I'm bored. I lived in Kansas and it wasn't fun. No offense to people in Kansas. I wasn't having fun. But that's why I started booking shows. I was like, I want to have, I wrote a couple booking agents, and next thing I know, Haste Today's booking agent was like, hey, you want to do a show? And I was like, sure. And that's the first show I did. And there was 450 kids showed up in a VFW hall in the middle of nowhere. It was just Kansas? It was in Wichita, which is a great town. Yeah. But there were shows there, but it wasn't like this cultivated scene or this, One of my best friends in the world lives in Arkansas City. Oh, nice. Very cool.
Which people don't know, you have to pronounce Arkansas.
Yes.
You can't pronounce it Arkansas.
Yes.
They get angry with you.
They both get angry on both sides.
But also what's interesting about that part of the world is if you're a Wizard of Oz fan, you obviously know that there's like the yellow brick road that they follow to the Emerald City.
Yes.
But the guy, Frank Baum, who wrote that, knew his geography well enough to remember all of the cobblestone roads that they have or the brick roads that they have. So there's not only yellow brick roads in the downtown areas of those small towns of southern Kansas, but there's red brick roads. So there's a red brick road going the opposite way from the Emerald City, and then there's the yellow brick road going toward the Emerald City. And the theory is the red brick road leads Dorothy right back to Kansas had she taken that, if she just walked down that red brick road. If you go to Munchkin Town and you see there's a swirl, there's 2 different colored bricks, one going to the Emerald City, one that's a red brick trail, which she didn't follow, which would have taken her right back home because there's so many red brick roads in Kansas.
Interesting. Wow.
I'm full of useless trivia like that. I can't remove that stuff from my
I love that, though. That's cool.
My brain is filled with all of that type of trivia. In fact, I come from the perspective of unplug as much as you can and take your kid. I got an 8-year-old. Take them on a road trip. Stop at every time there's a sign on the road that says "Thing?" ? Arrow.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
those roadside attractions and pit stops along the highways of the United States, I think were put there every 90 minutes for a reason.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they knew kids got bored. And now kids just, you hand them a tablet and they can cruise for like 9 hours. But
I know.
I think it was great when you had to stop and see the world's largest peanut in Durant, Oklahoma, you know?
I missed that one, but I definitely should have paid attention.
You didn't miss much. Although they are doing a time capsule unearthing in Durant, Oklahoma for the world's largest peanut. 50 years ago, in 1973, they buried a bunch of legumes because back in those days, North Dallas suburbs, all the way up into the Oklahoma border, were filled with peanut farms. It is just peanut dust in the air, rising from the ground constantly from growing peanuts. And that has since changed. Now it's all just suburbs, basically from Dallas all the way to Oklahoma City. It's just suburbs the whole way. But they did make a time capsule memorial and bury it in 1973 to be opened this June. Here
Interesting. Wow.
I guess.
That's a world I didn't know. That's awesome.
That's probably the first thing you thought we'd be talking about.
Hey, you know what? There's little nerdy things I talk about that people are like, "What the hell?" Like,
Well, we could do this the whole entire podcast and not even bring up vinyl at all.
dude. So tell me, what? I know you said Value Pack, MXPX. That was for like what? What are some of the bands you loved growing up, man? Just tell me what you had going on.
Growing up in Colorado, there was sort of two things that happened in the 90s. One was an unusual, pervasive swelling of ska, punk adjacent stuff. So I worked and produced on a documentary called Pick It Up, Ska in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
So
I didn't see it, but I saw what.
You should watch it. It's great.
Oh, cool.
It's the whole story of third wave ska sort of rising up out of the 80s two-tone British invasion scene.
Yeah.
And because, as you know from your Kansas promoting days, Denver is sort of the middle road stop for all touring bands between.
Absolutely.
It's the crossroads of America for bands going from the West Coast to the East Coast and vice versa. So you have to stop in Denver and you have to stop in Kansas. In Kansas City, I should say. And so, I grew up in the 90s loving not just the youth group Tooth and Nail type of music, but anything that came into the ska punk lexicon was sort of my jam. I loved all of the stuff from early Fueled by Ramen, so the Animal Chins, the Link 80s, the Asian Man Records stuff, Hippos. I was in a band, so we played with a lot of these bands who would come through town. I was just young and willing to play for free and bring probably 50, 60 kids to every show we would play.
Right.
And that was enough for a promoter to say, like, yeah, we'll give him 20 minutes to open this show. And so we played with all of the bands coming through all of the local Denver festivals, especially Christian adjacent ones like Tom Fest or Vision Fest.
I went to Vision Fest.
Yeah, man. We played there, our band, and we played right after Switchfoot one morning. I remember. It's crazy. But yeah, we played with Slick Shoes and Craig's brother and a lot of Five Iron Frenzy. So Five Iron Frenzy was sort of the cornerstone of our scene from a Christian band perspective, but even they were playing with Goldfinger, Skank and Pickle, a lot of shows that introduced my parents to the other music I was listening to besides youth group music. And to be able to justify to your parents that there's a value here, there's the preaching among the lost value, with these bands, and that you shouldn't shelter me from these lost bands or whatever we thought they were back in the day. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget going to a matinee show at the Bluebird with Five Iron Frenzy and the Redemptions, and I'm like, this is gonna be great. Matinee show with the Redemptions, and Redemptions get up first song. They're like, I just gotta say, this song's called "What the Fuck," and my dad's like, what?
Excuse me?
And I'm like, but don't worry, Dad. Five Iron Frenzy's up next, and they're gonna
save the crowd. Yeah.
And so there was that happening, but then there was concurrently we don't know what to call this music right now, but it's post-grunge alternative kind of hippie jam band stuff. That was a very culturally relevant thing that happened in Colorado. So bands that I would see a lot would be in the Blues Traveler,
Big Head
Gin
Todd?
Blossoms, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
I love Toad.
Even
Love
into a lot of the more jam bandy 4-hour, 5-hour long sets, Widespread Panic,
Fish.
Leftover Salmon, Fish. Fish got banned. I was at the show that they got banned from Red Rocks to ever play again because they had set up a commune for basically a week of nothing but just stoners and camped out hippies, and they just took over the whole town. I mean, for like a week, and then left the place in shambles. So as much as there was this funny Mother Earth first ethos about it, those were the filthiest, littering people you'd ever seen in your life. They just like treated the grounds of Red Rocks like it was garbage and just their own landfill. So it was interesting to grow up in Boulder, Colorado, which is where I grew up, where all of that stuff was very much part of the predominant music scene, and still is. If you go up into the mountain towns, I was just up in Keystone on Monday, and you turn on any radio station in the mountains, they're still to this day playing Sister Hazel somewhere more familiar, just straight through.
I just saw them last year.
Yeah, all that stuff. And I love that music. And it makes me kind of feel like I got no beef with it the way that I would get beef with some of my other 90s nostalgia. I've got a whole record collection back here, and there's probably 7 cubes filled with 90s music, of just 90s rock music. And that has everything from Soul Coughing to Ace of Base to everything. Like it's a lot of 90s rock. And as you know, the rock radio format, after Nirvana died, it just became a free-for-all for like 7 years, where anything could stick. Mighty Boss Jones could stick, Aqua, Barbie Girl could stick, Squirrel Nut Zippers could stick, and Soul Asylum could stick. It was just a total bizarro game. And the stuff that has aged the best for me still to this day is the soft alternative contemporary rock radio stuff. Refreshments, Gin Blossoms, all that.
That's amazing. I saw Gin Blossoms and Toad last year open for Bare Naked Ladies. It was amazing. They crush it. They're so good. Like it's just incredible bands.
I love it. I'm a huge, like, one of my favorite bands of all time is Roger Clyne the Peacemakers. They were called the Refreshments in the 90s, but now they're called Roger Clyne the Peacemakers. And to this day, that Southwestern desert rock jangle pop stuff that they did, that Gin Blossoms did, that Sidewinders did, Dead Hot Workshop, all these bands really had a unique sound down there that I don't think you can qualify to people who don't understand. And then I guess the manifestation of that now is Red Dirt stuff from Oklahoma. You know, it's kind of the modern version of that, like Cody Canada and Cross Canadian Ragweed and all those bands. I like music. I'm a nerd.
Yeah, dude, same here. Same here. You mentioned Boulder. Did you ever go to Club 156 up there?
Absolutely, yeah. So
I saw Jimmy World there.
First 5-round show I went to was there with Animal Chin, Link 80, and the Hippos.
Nice.
For sure.
That was on the campus, I think, the original one.
Right downstairs. I saw a lot of shows there. A lot.
Same here. It's weird. We probably were at some of the same shows because I lived in Denver for about a year. You know, go to the Ogden and Bluebird and Mammoth Event Center, Upper Room, Tuesday Night at Your Mom's, like all these like.
I'm sure you saw our band a bunch of times.
I might have. My brother was in a band out there. I think when I talked to you before, he was in a band called Fourth Year Freshman. They're a punk rock band.
We played with them a bunch.
Yeah, he was the drummer. So, I loved Denver. I loved living out there, but I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was a Florida boy, and I got out there and had my heart broken, if you will, from a relationship, and kind of was. I went to shows. I saw a ton of shows. It was amazing. But I was like, always had my heart back here just in general. So I only stayed there for about a year, but man, I loved all those venues.
I even have like this no use hoodie that says More Touringness on the back from 2000.
Yeah.
Because I got that at the Bluebird when they played with Dance Hall Crashers, and
Dude, that's so cool. I think I saw Dance Hall with MXPX there or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this is going to be probably not as interesting for everybody else. We're just geeking out over here on this podcast, which is fine. That's okay. I've done a few podcasts where people can hear the story of Unoriginal Vinyl elsewhere, but I do like just meeting people who had a similar experience growing up. And I think if I was to put words to or language around Unoriginal Vinyl's purpose right now, it's just to not say, hey, remember that time when this happened. Mm-hmm. It's more to say, here's why this can matter, and here's why this can still be relevant to the future generations for these people to tell their stories, the ways that people have learned life lessons about what it was like to be in a band back in the 90s, and then how they look back on that, and their ability to reflect with some amount of irony and character development along the way is the thing that I want to focus in on for Unoriginal Vinyl, like releases. I want people to pick up any release that we work on and say, this thing looks great, and now I get a story to read, and now I get something to interact with, like, I don't know, like we used to when we would hold a CD in our hands for the first time, right when we bought it, and we ripped the plastic off, and we're ready to put it into our Sony Discman and hope that the anti-skip worked long enough in our car that we could hear the songs. 3-4 songs all the way through without a skip, like I want that experience to kind of transcend into a future generation and look at cool artwork blown up as good as it can get. Nobody's ever going to be making poster replications of the Life in General bully holding the jock in his arms, but maybe we can get close or something that people would be proud of. And it's not a game for me. It's not a social media who's winning likes or followers thing. This is an art design company, and we'll take art design projects on if we find them interesting. So we'll say no to people, we'll say yes to people just based on their vibe, not on how popular they are. The first couple of records we worked on were just people that I was vehemently passionate about. One guy's an acoustic guitar player from Louisville, Colorado, that I grew up in, the hometown I grew up in. And he's like a YouTube sensation, but he tours, 20, 30 spots a year. And he deserved to have his record on vinyl to show his kids. So we did Trace Bundy records, 2 different Trace Bundy records for him that he could just sell himself. It's like, there's no money for me to be making off of all of this. Like there's money to be now made when you do multiple projects for a graphic design purpose for different labels and artists. But that was never what we were thinking about when we started. We just did it because it was the right thing to do, to own that thing on vinyl for the first time. And come hook or crook, we're going to do it.
What, when did you get I want to continue with this conversation and go with it, but I'm just curious, like, what was the moment, where was the moment where you were like, I'm going to do this?
When I quit social media, so probably 2016, I was caught up in that. I think, like, I got to post every day. I want to tell a story every day about why I like this record. And I would do that. I did that for like a year straight. And I wasn't getting burnt out, but I was starting to ask myself, like, what's the meaning behind all of it? If this social media platform at the time, Instagram, goes away tomorrow because of an acquisition, I spent a lot of my time telling these stories to an audience of people who will vaguely remember it in 5 years. I would like to try something a little bit more permanent, but I don't want to do it by just posting social media posts about my favorite record.
Sure.
I have to reassess. So I scrapped everything. I nuked all social media that I had, and I went away for over a year, and I just decided to put that idea of not being an original person, not being an original, like a recreator of other people's intellectual property, be it audio recordings or artwork that they had made for the record packaging back in 2003 or 1994 or whatever. Just call myself Unoriginal Vinyl as like a brand, So I relaunched essentially a brand called Unoriginal Vinyl, and the purpose was to say to people who had followed me back in the day, like, the collector has now decided to put his money where his mouth is. So for the collector people, they were into it. This is rad. He's actually going out and going to try to do it. We've been talking about wanting Haste the Day, burning bridges on vinyl forever. What if somebody actually went out and made it happen? Wouldn't it be cooler if it was one of us?
Absolutely.
It wasn't just some company like Universal licensing it out to a company, a corporation that's just like, let's blow up the CD art, let's just move on, put it on gold vinyl, call it quits, And everything that we have done since that day has been a reflection of the joy we have received from being a part of this scene.
It's great.
Just mirroring that back to the world and saying with a very firm tongue firmly in our cheek that this is unoriginal stuff. This is somebody else's work. This is us presenting the best possible way to remember this and celebrate this art that you ever could find.
Absolutely, dude.
It's not through streaming.
Dude, before you and I talked, I'll be honest with you, I thought everything you've, like, just the quality down to just the little details, I've thought are incredible. And, like, it actually kind of reminds me, ironically, of Tooth and Nail in general, because when I was growing up, that's what I loved about Tooth and Nail. It was, like, the little details. It was, like, they had great artwork. They spent their money on great producers, that they could afford, and they just these little details that, like, they didn't just half-ass it. They made it to what it is. And it's to me, I like that's what I feel like you're in the same vein of thought. It's like quality. And it's like that to me as a record buyer and as a music fan, I geek out over that, because to me, typically, if I like the way a record cover looks, or typically I'm probably going to like the band, at least, somewhat like the band, or at least I'd appreciate it. And I think that just to me is the whole package of a record in general. It's not just the music, it's the artwork, it's the the lyric, pulling out the lyrics, the liner notes, like all that stuff is just so essential in a record, at least in the 90s it was.
I want it to be fully immersive of all the senses. I want you to look at it, touch it, listen to it, read it, think about it. I want that to be your experience listening to an album.
I love that.
Rather than like going, well, I made this cool playlist and there's one Anne Boleyn song on it that I like. Like I know Stephen Christian didn't slave away writing in his little journal for months and months on the road, trying to craft cities into the sort of beautiful whole album that it is, for the purposes of us just being like, yeah, Stationary is a pretty cool jam, man. I'm going to put that on my playlist and move on. I want people to read about it. And I think the idea that you're talking about there is branding. Like Tooth and Nail's brand was so strong and fierce and a force to be reckoned with on any Christian bookshelf, and then eventually on any Best Buy shelf or any Hot Topic shelf or record store shelf in general, because it was a good brand. And so from day one, I came from soda and selling Jones Soda. Jones Soda is a great brand.
Totally.
The guy that ran Jones Soda and invented Jones Soda, he wasn't looking to sell soda and sugar water. He wanted a cool brand. And he made a cool brand happen in the 90s. And he was
absolutely,
voted one of the top innovators in all of Fortune 500 when his company wasn't even worth $30 million. Everybody else on the list, top 100 Fortune 500 CEOs, were all billion-dollar plus brands. And then there's Jones Soda at 30 mil, who's like killing it with brand recognition for a really small brand. And it's like, so that's what this is about. Then if you add the Unoriginal Vinyl logo to your packaging, Equal Vision Records or Solid State Records or anybody else, you name it, Iodine Recordings, like bringing that brand in with you takes like not only the whole audience will have on our back along for the ride, but then it also tells a ton of your fans Iodine Recordings cared about this art like Unoriginal Vinyl does, and it becomes a rising tide raises all ships kind of collab. And both brands are elevated as a result, as is Stretch Armstrong's art and music, and the painter who painted Rituals of Life, who's never had his artwork shown anywhere.
You're breathing life into it, You're
and making it relevant. It sounds very blowhardy and probably a little bit like highfalutin, but I've thought a lot about all this. That's what I spent a year off social media doing nothing but thinking about. You don't sort of come up with these ideas overnight. You are constantly trying to refine them and get them better and tighter and smarter, and realize where your boundaries are. And you run up against rough edges with people who are not nice to you as a result of you trying to do something on a different path. And I've certainly had my share of those with artists and bands and managers, mostly managers, who I have said, I will never again work with that camp because they're manager is so horrendous, you know?
That's disgusting.
And that's okay. That's fine. Like it's a sign of success when you continue and you're able to finally move on from like your hero worship phase of doing this into these are peers and I want to elevate them and they appreciate what I bring to the table from a knowledge standpoint. So people think that I come across as a little bit intense in the way that I speak about this stuff or almost academic, like a professor who's trying to teach things to other people. But like, this is just the way that I feel and I can't not be authentically passionate about it. That's what I want people to understand more than anything. It's just passion. It's not thinking that I have an answer that they don't have. I'm passionate about this stuff and I want my grandkid to understand what like Tooth and Nail was. Yeah. Historically. Just like we see box sets for Stax records from the 60s in record stores when we go there. And that's not a brand that people, apart from the brand, like they might not be able to name 6 artists on that label, but it's such a good brand that people recognize it. And to me, the Tooth and Nail type stuff made such an impact on my life and multiple other people that I know, their lives as well. It's worth keeping that brand alive. And I don't think that that necessarily gets to happen only through new bands breaking, streaming, and music videos. You know? Got to have other things to substantially hold on to, which is why I have a Danielson record 10-inch in my record collection or whatever, you know?
Absolutely. That's great. Let me ask you, what are some of your favorite records that you guys have been able to do? I know you've done quite a few, but is there any particular ones? You know, I know you mentioned the gentleman that you put out his record just for the hell of it, that, you know, wanted to support him. What are some of the ones that you just are like, hell yeah, I did that?
As I look through, can you still hear me okay? Is
yeah,
my audio okay?
You're great, man.
So, you know, Roadside Monument was really fun because taking the Roadside Monument artwork, which is admittedly like ghastly bad. Yeah. Ghastly bad. It's blurry, it's distorted, it's enigmatic, it doesn't really mean anything. Yeah. It was almost like I sat with John Ford at an Unwed Sailor show, maybe in 2017. And I said, I'm going to start a label. He's like, if anybody's going to do it, you're going to do it. That's awesome. You know? And I was having him sign all my Unwed Sailor test pressings and all that. And I said, I'm going to put out Roadside Monument. He's like, that's never going to happen. I don't see it. It's not possible. I'm like, no, you don't get it. I'm going to do it. And he's like, but could it sell? Could we sell? I don't understand. You know, like
he said the same thing to me when I was like, I heard you doing it. He's like, is it going to sell?
Yeah. But I thought like this artwork is so bad, but it'd be really fun to make it all 3D. So like we went on to eBay and bought like a giant carton full of 3D glasses and then basically just took every layer and rendered isolated every single element to this, including like the paint lines, to make it a 3D pop out jacket. And it's very subtle, but it adds a texture element to the packaging that makes no sense. So when I told John and Doug and Matt Johnson and even Scott Hatch from Burnt Toast Vinyl, like, I want to do this in 3D. They're like, but why? This is like an art indie rock band. And I said, because it's unexpected. Yeah. Because it's the thing that you don't imagine a cool indie underground band from Seattle doing. Yeah. Which is exactly why you do it that way. You do it not to be contrary for the sake of like, fuck art, but you do it for the sake of, it gives it that extra little touch and that little sense of awareness that like this music is not just listened to. This music is experienced, felt. Yeah. You can almost like look at this cover and it like tastes acrid in your mouth. Yeah. You know I got you. I want those experiences to sort of be felt. I also really liked doing Juliana Theory. Yeah. Yeah. So this was fun because I think that with Juliana Theory, this artwork was so bad to begin with. Yeah. Like if you remember, when we restored it, we actually put this girl in front of this tower, this satellite tower. If you look at it on the CD artwork, she's translucent for no reason. So this, we completely restored the artwork for this from scratch using original photos. And we had a lot of cool elements, and we worked with Brett and Josh Felder, the only two remaining members of Juliana Theory, essentially, in great detail to try to understand for the first time, when they weren't under deadlines and constraints for like, we need to have this album out by this street date.
Sure.
What was the intention behind it? Like, what did you want to, what story were you trying to tell visually? And Brett actually like talks about the whole history of everything about the album's release. And I love getting to have that commentary from him. But then more importantly, we did this wraparound tour exclusive VIP package wrap. And inside of it, we put another essay talking about how the artwork came to be, where it started with like a picture of a guy's crotch only. And then it moves into a picture of Devin Aoki, the supermodel, which they did not have the rights to publish.
Wow.
And that got rejected by the label. And then you see here the translucent girl, and then you see, and it's basically Brett telling the story. And you know who he's telling that story to? 100 people who bought the VIP vinyl for their tour. And that's it. Like, those are the only people who, I suppose you could probably go into Discogs and read the essay at this point, because somebody's probably scanned it, taken pictures of it. But I love to do those experiments with people having more than one like reason to buy the record. So Furnace Fest exclusive drops. You've got to be at Furnace Fest to get them.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, I can't. My life has changed. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I've got a family. You don't get it. You don't get what it's like. I just want you to release the thing that I want the way that I want to get it, which is through pre-order.
Yeah.
And I wait in a queue. And I'm like, no, man, you're missing it. Life's out there. You have to experience these shows still, or these bands go away. Their stories go away forever.
Yeah.
If we don't give people a reason to still go to shows, you know?
Totally.
I mean, so anytime I can mix the media with the live experience, I think that that's like such a value add for bands. They love that pitch, and the fans who are there get to have almost like an experience that you used to have quite commonly, I think, in the 90s and early 2000s at shows, which was like the only place you could buy that merch. Was at that show. Yeah. And then things became common. So again, not to like make it sound almost academic in its intention or too sentimental in its intention. I just think that I want to still see you at the show. I want to still be at the show. I still want to get in the pit at the show.
Absolutely.
So I'd say between Roadside and Juliana Theory, there's a million others. Like, we spend a lot of time thinking about these things critically. I like the ones that we do original art for. Like, We Were Sharks is a Toronto band. We did a record that had 12 different inserts in it that you could change out the graphic inside of the car mirror, so you could just see different scenes going by. That stuff's fun, man.
That's awesome, dude. I was going to ask you what's the most challenging, but I feel like both of those would have been the answer. Like,
I'd say the most challenging was just doing the first Furnace Fest drop and having in your mind a number like 1,500 records to get screen printed individually. Doesn't sound impossible.
Yeah.
T-shirt companies make screen printed T-shirts all the time, right? Yeah. You just forget that a record, you can't fold over a bunch on top of each other. Like, you have to find space to have those records dry. And our buddy Austin up at Mind Over Matter in Chicago had to do every one of those by hand. Wow. And we helped any way we could. And just the amount of time that took, and the amount of frustration people felt that it took so long was aggravating. But there's not a single person who got that finished product and didn't think, this is really special. This was worth every minute I waited in line for this thing. Yeah. You know? They all loved it. And then we simplified the process the second year. So all I had to do was hand you an Obi strip and it was over. Yeah. Our interaction lasted 20 seconds, and then you could buy it at your leisure, and then you can go watch your favorite band and not have to wait in a merch row to get it. So I'm excited to do it again that way, probably this next year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I like that you did it one way, learn not to do it that way, changed it, and now like you said, simplified it. But it's everyone wins. It's kind of a cool concept that that you've been able to modify over the years and continue to modify.
Well, I think originally as well, you wanted to do a new drop every day for the purposes of keeping your brand front and center in people's minds. They go to bed thinking about how am I going to find that scavenger hunt and solve it the next day and the next day. And so instead of buying merch one time for one band on one day and thinking about them for maybe that 30 minutes you're waiting in line to get the merch and then you're on to the next, we're keeping the brand visibility going the whole festival all weekend, and then people leading up to it talking about it and leading after it. And this next year, I just don't care. It doesn't matter. I'd rather just drop all 3 records at once, and you can tell me you want 1 day, 2 day, or 3 day record. Do you want 1, 2, or 3 records right now to go buy yourself? Yeah. And so that you don't have to find me the next day, but if you didn't find me on day 1, you can still find me on day 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look at me. I'm like invisible. I look like the invisible man in those shows. I look like nobody. It's the best. Nothing memorable. I am Tooth and Nail called me, Adam Scatula from Tooth and Nail recently called me the unknowable man. He said, if you were to come to my church and you were new, I would, and this isn't a dig at you, I would just not be able to define you.
Sure. I would agree with that.
Even today, like I'm wearing a hat and a no use, so that might be a little bit, but when I take my hat off, look at me, man. When I take off like the no use hoodie, then I'm zero. It's just like a suburban person.
I get it.
Sort of not,
I get it. So I know I don't want you to obviously spill the beans, but any projects coming up that you're just like super stoked on, something that like you're like, holy shit, they hit me up, or things that, I guess kind of allude to maybe some upcoming things without having to spill the beans, obviously.
Yeah. So for Furnace Fest, the idea for Unoriginal Vinyl and Solid State to collaborate and have a solid state drop essentially that's exclusive to them, it's that it's not a collaboration with another artist, and it's not something that we want to repress. We think they'll sell 500 units probably in total.
Sure.
Period. Not likely that it'll get a repress. So wow. I think all 3 titles last year were right on that border's edge of like being the exact right number.
Yeah.
I think we'd gone 150 more copies of any of those records, it would have been a disaster.
Wow.
Lost all profitability. So we have to be thinking in those terms. And then a lot of the bands that are playing Furnace Fest this year are now friends of ours. We've already released several of their records. So we have to think about like, do those bands want to be part of the action? And in fairness, it's their art. I want in every possible scenario for there to be a collaboration between the bands having their own variant to sell themselves and make their own money that they paid for, and Solid State to have a different variant. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of bands playing Furnace Fest this year that have hit me up and asked me about doing vinyl for them. And in every instance, I have taken them off the list of considerations for Unoriginal Vinyl exclusive drops because I want them to have merch to sell themselves. Sure. I want them to have their own variant and their own good feeling leaving the merch row. And I don't want to compete with that, you know what I mean, as much as possible. But there are occasionally bands like Life in Your Way who just said, like, we don't want to buy copies ourselves. We're happy that you're releasing our record. We're happy to put the OB strips on our merch table. And but we don't want to like have to worry about shipping down 250 of our own copies down. So there's a situation like that this upcoming year where there's a band who just said, yeah, we're not interested in buying copies, but that's as much as I can say about it right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spill the beans too much about it, but I think that for our fans of this whole project, once they see what we're going to release, it'll make perfect sense. I've already actually dropped more than enough times intentions to do at least one of these titles and told people that I had already done them. I already worked on them in the past. So it was maybe not a good idea when I originally put it out there, but now it's a great idea, if that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Another thing I will say about all of these projects, it's like I've also learned that there will be circumstances and seasons in which an artist or a management team or a circumstance comes along that makes it impossible for me to want to work with them. but that's only a season.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So for me to say I'll never work with anybody again is probably not in my best interest. You know what I mean?
Sure.
There could be, I wouldn't usually take on a working relationship with a customer or a client or artist or something like that unless I felt there was really a good purpose at the end to be served.
Absolutely.
Even if they're themselves not socially the most graceful or whatever. You know?
No, I gotcha. I get it.
Yeah, I can never say never again, I guess. But there's a lot more working outside of Tooth and Nail this year. A lot more labels and artists who have hit us up to say, like, hey, can you do what you did for this band or this package or whatever? Yeah. And we're always game to try new things. I also like the idea of breaking artists that nobody's ever heard of. So I want to do some more of that too. And I don't want to be a label. I don't want to sink my own money into any of this. I want to be able to get paid for a service, which is good branding, good presentation, good fan experience overall when they receive that end product. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if they're willing to hire us as project managers for that, then, or as just a graphic design service to make mock-ups for them only or whatever, like, fine, let's do it. Who cares?
Yeah. Have you worked with VRP, Vinyl Record Pressing in Jacksonville?
We have, yeah.
Those are, I work, they're two of my best friends. I worked with them for a while. Jonathan and Walt. The total, I worked at when they first opened the factory. I worked there for about a year. But I used to tour manage Sun Bears, his old band. And then Walt was in another local band called Shangri-La. It's incredible. But yeah, those are home.
I have that down here somewhere.
Shangri-La?
Yeah.
Are you freaking serious? It's so good, dude. Have you listened to it?
Uh-huh.
Dude, so Jeremy Griffith just remixed one of the songs on it, and they sent it to me last night, and it's mind-blowing good.
Yeah, I have it somewhere.
Dude, it's great. Great band. That's cool. I just had the drummer from that band, Mike Von Boston, his son is in a band called Flip Turn. They're like really blowing up right now.
Cool.
Playing like Bonnaroo, Lala, all that stuff. I just had him on as well. But yeah, man. Dude, that's awesome. I had a feeling you worked with them, but I wasn't 100%. I haven't worked for them for a little bit, but just super good homies of mine.
Yeah, it's funny. So with vinyl, in case you don't know, like, there's two different types of machines that go into making vinyl. There's old machines that are called manual presses.
Yeah, that's what.
And the manual press would be something where you would take a bunch of different types of wax and you'd melt it down, and you'd wear special protective gloves, and you'd essentially shape a puck like this. Yeah. This is a PVC puck that is melted plastic pellets, right? So you got the plastic pellets right here.
Yeah.
And then you turn them into a melty thing. And then if you want to make a splatter, for instance, you take extra little pellets and you kind of dot them
inside.
Yep. And then it smashes down to make a platter. VRP and a couple other pressing plants that I work with only do automatic loading machines, which is more like a
Third Man does that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't have the ability to do necessarily cool variants, because it's mostly colors and swirls. So like this one's like all black pellets with a little bit of gold. Yeah. So that's what happens when you automatically load pellets into a machine, and it just sort of goos out. And then smashes it down. But I like to work with domestic if I can.
Sure.
Always. Domestic pressing plants and people who really appreciate the craft of what they're doing, you know what I mean? So when it gets smashed down, by the way, you take this puck and then it smashes it down, and then you have your record right here, but then you have the foreskin around is what I call it. It's not called that, but then they trim it off, and then that gets you your finished record at the end of the day. These types of things are more common with the automatic, these like dispersion color variants and things like that. Whereas... And they can do some cool starbursts if you just mix the right two colors together into a hopper. But results can vary on those automatic loading machines. I would say that they are best pressure tested with solid colors almost exclusively, instead of trying to do crazy variants all the time on those.
Totally.
Those are best left for ones that you're doing a physical puck manipulation yourself on a manual machine, a manual press.
Yeah. I did, so I worked with them for quite a while, so I'm super familiar with what you're saying, and it makes complete sense what you're saying I totally get it. It's weird because I worked there a couple years ago, and it's like, and in my mind, they're like, we're going to open a vinyl factory, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be like, oh, it's party time 24/7. It's going to rule. And then 2 days in, we're like, this sucks. It's cool in theory, but
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of actual skilled labor work. So
absolutely.
Unskilled labor work too, of just stuffing the records. People don't think about, they get so finicky as if as these things were all machine assembled and it's easy to just return something like that and get a new one. But everything that we do was made by hand, and there's a finite amount of copies.
Yep.
So if you're going to get uppity about having to be offered a refund by Merch Now for a record that was damaged when it was, in transit, and you didn't opt for the extra insurance or something like that, and you're really persnickety and emailing me about it, where's my free record, Jason? You put this out. It's all right. Goes with the territory, I guess.
Yeah.
It's also part of just being in that in-between space of being a brand partner with a lot of these labels, and then people assuming we're a label. Yeah. We just have all this unlimited capital to refund them ourselves or extra records. I got one copy of every color of most of what we've done. Sometimes there's extra colors that people repress that I don't know about, but that's all I have. I don't have a warehouse filled with anything. I got my record collection. That's it. And this was a way to get the coolest records I've ever thought of on vinyl and get to own them for free. So
cool. Dude, I love that.
And that's why it's just a hobby. It's not a job. It's not my career. Just do it for fun on the side.
Yeah. But, sweet, man. That's really cool. So what, any good shows you got coming up that you're going to, or anything cool?
I want to go to Illuvity.
Oh yeah, they're great. Yeah.
They're Scandinavian.
Where are they playing at?
At the Ogden.
Okay.
So they're Scandinavian technical death metal, 9 members, hurdy-gurdy player, fiddle player, a violin and penny whistle player, 2 female singers, 1 screamer, just really
awesome,
interesting questing type of music.
Yeah.
Going questing, listening to this. Our Last Night's coming. I want to see them. They're reuniting a few new
nice.
And then just, there's Red Rock shows galore.
Yeah,
lots of Red Rock shows, and a lot of Weezer's coming to Fiddlers, and Nate Bargatze, the comedian's coming to Red Rock.
Oh, nice. He's great.
Stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm a big Zac Brown Band fan too, so he'll come through town. I think it might be this year. I don't remember.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're all cool dudes.
Yeah, we got tickets to see the Killers coming up, and the Smile. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, Pedro the Lion, of course. He's coming through. So, yeah, man. I just had Jonathan Ford on my podcast actually the other day. He's going to be coming out soon when this comes out. But yeah, he's incredible. Yeah.
He's the first guy I met in 1997 in the offices of Tooth and Nail. He was working in the order.
Yeah, I believe that. He's such a sweetie. I was just a kid who snuck in, and I just found the floor that Tooth and Nail was on, and then went up there, and then went to the back door and opened it up, and there was just for me, it was just paradise. It was just I can't imagine.
Super toned shirts and Living Sacrifice posters as far as the eye could see.
I love that.
And John stumbles out, and he just was the coolest looking Seattle guy ever to me at that time. Who even looks like this?
Right.
Is this guy? He looked like he stumbled out of the fish market at that moment. He had the full-on Steve Sisu look at the time, with the orange beanie and the feathery blonde hair coming across his eye. Yep. And I'm just man, if this is what Seattle is, then sign me up.
Exactly.
I gotta live here when I grow up.
Dude, he's a badass.
Yeah, he really is. He's one of those guys that you just know forever.
Yeah.
Even in his real lifetime right now is so underappreciated.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Revered by so many musicians the world over.
Oh, I know.
As long as time goes on, it's going to be what was that guy doing? How did he write like that? Yeah. Why did he think like that?
Totally.
A true artist.
Absolutely. And he's the sweetest guy. It's just awesome to see him still being, I was talking about it. It's just so awesome that he's still being able to do it and, make a living from it. It's great. It's awesome.
And making really great stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
New record's amazing. Mute the Charm.
Yeah. And all the Spartan's done really well with their the variants. They look fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, John Fraser at Spartan, he and I are really, really close still. And, we talked a lot about the idea of like whether or not I would just go work at Spartan.
Yeah.
And work on licensing, or if I should just do my own thing. And I think ultimately I decided I just didn't want to, I didn't want to be in a label, in a traditional sense of the label. And I could do the licensing stuff, but the idea of it being a graphic design company made way more sense to me. Like being more like Ryan Clark and Don Clark than
love them.
Being like John and trying to A&R bands and develop bands and deal with all the lawyers from Universal and the licensing titles and all that stuff just sounded awful to me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I do all that stuff anyways, now that I understand sort of how it works politically. But I think right at the start, it was like, I'd love to tow my wagon alongside of Spartan because he's just so talented.
Oh, he's so awesome. He's amazing. I got to catch up with him at Furnace Fest last year. It was cool. Like we've talked.
Did we talk there?
No, I don't think we did. I feel bad saying we didn't, but no, I'm sure we will this next year. But it would have been cool. I was there for sure. I was hanging out. Ryan Luther? Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, so I was hanging out with him and he hooked me up. So
did you run into any of the people, the Unoriginal Vinyl people handing out OBs or anything?
I saw them and I wanted to get, I hate to say this, I wanted to get Life in Your Way, but it was like one of those things where I was like, I'd rather let someone else buy it. My friend got a copy of it and I was like, I love that record. I think it's fantastic. But at the time it was like, you know how it is. You got to pick and choose records and it's like financially at that moment, I was like, I just can't be spending money.
That's kind of the beauty of like why we did it that way, because we had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
If it didn't sell out, we didn't bring any assets with us that we had to ship back.
Yeah.
We can sell any remainders online the next day and they're gone. And it's a win-win. The people who did show up still get the OBs exclusive to their experience.
Great.
That are hand numbered. So there's no way that's a losing proposition.
Absolutely.
For even the fans, Yeah. And so, did you see them? Did you watch Life in Your Way?
Oh yeah, they were phenomenal. I saw you. Didn't you jump out? Yeah.
Did you see that?
You did.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a good time, man. I'm really looking forward to this year, though. It'll be cool. There's just a ton of bands that are playing this year that I used to book, so it'll be cool to bro down, hang out.
Totally.
I'm really
looking forward to it.
I know, it's exciting, man.
What else you got? What else are you thinking about? Anything?
Well, I'm just, man. Yeah, I think this is a cool conversation. I think it's just, I like that we're we don't just met each other, but it's I feel like we've known each other for quite a while. I feel like.
There's a lot of people who have these shared experiences with the scene we grew up in and the way that we view all of this now. I get caught and stuck with people who think that any particular time period was the best time period.
Sure.
The best time period is always right here and now.
Sure. And
all the life lessons that I get to have accrued up to this point all feed into me having more enriched, authentic conversations with people.
Yeah.
As opposed to I wish I could just go back to it being 1998 again. And it's no, there's no part of me that I would be remiss to have all these great experiences taken away from me to go back to any of those parts of my life.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And it's not even I wish I could have made different choices. I would have made better choices. I would have fixed something. It's I don't know. I'm like a classic Enneagram 7 optimist enthusiast about life. These experiences to get to meet a guy like you who has had a similar coming up, and us both revel in it, but then also look at each other and be like, man, it feels good to see my people out there.
Yeah. I agree.
You have to just say it without saying it sometimes.
I love that.
It's cool.
I always tell people I love to see my friends succeed. I just want the best. I want people to crush it in whatever they do.
To me, that's what this whole thing is about. It's you holding that thing, that record you always wanted for your whole life, and now it's a real thing.
Yeah,
that's you succeeding. That's me helping you get there. It's me helping you unlock a memory that was the last time you got to spend with your dad.
Yeah.
listening to that record or whatever. And now you've got that thing that will always be that symbol or that gateway key for you to unlock that. And that can be a book about Furnace Fest that we did, like the coffee table.
Oh
book.
yeah, I never got to see that. I wanted to see that.
You got to get it. It's great.
All right, I'll buy it.
It'll be there next year.
Okay.
I think VIPs are going to get some or something like that this year.
Okay.
If you bought a package. So it's a really, really cool testimony to our scene, and it's the kind of thing that I wish had existed for Cornerstone.
Dude, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, and I don't think people have even really begun to unpack what that experience is for them.
What year did you go? Did you ever go?
I've been a bunch of years, a lot. Okay. My first year was 98, and I hitchhiked there.
Nice.
So as a 14-year-old, I hitchhiked.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I went in 2000, I think.
I went 2000, I think 2002 or 3 again, for sure. And
I went to Furnace Fest in 2000 as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do we start to talk about those things other than something that happened a long, 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 long time ago?
Yeah.
And not even just telling me how great you thought it was or how bad you thought it was or whether it rained or not. You get a little, like 2 layers deeper if you can on the meaning that has come from it, the joy or sorrow or whatever it is. And I try to encourage bands to think those things before they write retrospectives for the stuff. And I end up usually editing them a lot anyways and getting them like they're like close to the track and the train of thought they want to be on, but I have to kind of center the train track for them. And then they go, oh yeah, actually you just paraphrased it. I just did one recently. For a North Carolina or South Carolina band. Where's Raleigh?
North Carolina.
So there's a band from there that has a very famous album that came out in, I want to say 2002 or 2003, that we're doing it got to be 20th anniversary.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And another band from Carolina who grew up as contemporaries of them that does a podcast that's well known in our scene. Mm-hmm. I asked him to write the retrospective for it.
Oh, very cool.
And he was dancing around the point that he was trying to get to. He couldn't quite find it. As a writer, he could speak it orally in his podcasting language, but writing it presented a different type of challenge for this guy. So I was just like, here's the beginning, middle, and end of what the point is trying to make. Now write everything in between. And then he's like, oh yeah, that framework actually, no. That metaphor, that works. That doesn't sound like my voice. I'm going to take that out. And I have no ego about it. I don't even need to take credit for,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's his writing at that point,
That's awesome. Dude, this has been a super cool conversation, man.
Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, man. Thank you for hanging out. Let's do it again, man. Let's catch up and do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be probably within the next couple months, there's going to be 8 to 10 releases announced. And so,
dude, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. And we can go over them. That'd be cool.
Cool, man. Thanks.
Jason, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Glad to do it.
Absolutely, man. Let's talk soon.
All right.
All right, buddy.
You can stop recording the call and I can tell you more.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, you know what? I will do that. All right. Let me stop the recording. Bye. Hey guys, thank you to the listener for tuning in to this latest episode. I'd also obviously like to thank Jason Zeimet for his time. Unoriginal Vinyl is kicking ass right now, so I really enjoyed this conversation. It was cool to, throw it back and forth and just be able to talk about what's influenced both of us, as well as, kind of the upcoming things that we both have going on in our lives. So thank you, Jason, again. Thank you, listener. Add me on Instagram and Facebook if you'd like, at The Rumors Are True Cast. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Talk to you soon.